Hello, everyone. By show of hands, how many of you are running Puppet 3.0 or 3? Cool. And Puppet 4? Nice. Lucky you. So yeah, I'm Rhommel Lamas. I work for eBay's Classified Group in Sydney. And I'm working actually for the platform that hosts Gumtree EU. Gumtree EU is one of our main platforms around the world. And yeah, what this talk is going to focus is a little bit about me, a little bit about Gumtree, a little bit how to untangle the code that you have in your Puppet repository. Later on, a little bit Q&A and a wrap up. So my config management experience started in 2007. I started with CF Engine 2. When I was migrating almost 1,000 servers from really complex shell scripts into CF Engine 2. Then I started with Puppet 2.7 from scratch. And a year after, as the platform grew up, we were around 500 instances in AWS. We decided to migrate to Puppet 3. And yeah, I consider myself a survivor because it wasn't an easy task. In 2013, I went to another company, and they had also, in that case, it was Puppet 2.5, I think. And they wanted to migrate as well to 3.0. And yeah, it wasn't easy either, even after the knowledge that I had at the moment. Then I decided to move to Australia, and I moved from two companies, and I ended up in eBay. And I saw the development of PuppetConf from another perspective, from a perspective of a new hire that is going to a company that has been written Puppet for 5 years or 6 years. And I learned a lot of stuff that should be done and a lot of stuff that you shouldn't be doing, and how this can be affecting your new hires and the process within your colleagues and all this. Right now, I'm testing the migration for Puppet 4 from a 3.8.4 version, and in a 5-year-old repository, which has around maybe 100 people committing code every day. And yeah, it has a lot of lines of code. My experience, I work for Wacky.tv, Treskel, Atlassian, BigCommerce, and now I'm working at eBay on the AU platform. I'm passionate about DevOps, and obviously right now I'm about schedulers. We're running Mesos in most of our infrastructure for microservices. And I also, whenever I have a chance, I get to an Iron Man concert in any of the countries that I'm living in. About Gumtree. Gumtree is the largest classified site in Australia at the moment, and we are on the top 10 list of the most visited sites in Australia. And we use Gumtree to refurbish all of our offices. These are actually pictures of the refurnished office. It was a really cool stuff to do. What makes Gumtree possible? We have many engineers around the globe committing code to the eBay's Classifieds group Puppet repository. In different time zones, obviously. And we have dozens of heterogeneous and homogeneous systems around our platform. We're running in a hybrid platform from bare metal, VMware, and now we're moving everything back to OpenStack, which is our internal cloud. And it's doing great at the moment. We'll see what are the challenges in the future. What I want with this talk is to focus a little bit on self-awareness and what is the importance of once in a while taking a step back and see what is going on with your code and what is going on with the process that you are taking to building your Puppet code. This is not an easy task, basically because as operations engineer, we just focus every day on what we are doing, and we just commit another line of code, and we get it reviewed if we have a code review process. And if not, basically we just merge to master because we need to roll out this change in production. And that's actually not a good practice. And that actually causes that our new hires get like strongly disappointed about what is going on there. I strongly believe that the hate that many people have for Puppet, because I've seen in the last 2 years about, yeah, I have this Puppet code, but Salt or Ansible or Chef are doing these other things better. I think that it comes from a bad management of your Puppet code. Oh, sorry. Oh. So whatever happens is, what happens in operations is, we start with this new tool that claims to be really fancy, and we start writing code there. And after 5 years, we say, like, oh, this is really hard to maintain. Like, we cannot continue on this path. And instead of thinking on how is the best way to improve this, we just decide to, oh, there is another cool toy in the field, which is called Salt. And then you just go to Salt and rebuild all your infrastructure within Salt, and after 5 years, you have the same problem that you had with Puppet. So yeah, at the end, maybe it's not a problem of the tool, it's a problem of how or which workflow are you taking for. Also, as an operations engineers, we tend to focus in this kind of mindset of, yeah, because I did this thing, it's the best way to do it and the cool way to do it. And we should actually try to stop on that mindset and focus a little bit on our new hires and our colleagues on how to do stuff a little bit better for them, and how to get to a point where coding for Puppet or coding for whatever tool we're using, it gets easier for everybody. I don't know if everybody knows who these two guys are. So this is Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie, known because C and the Unix philosophy. I think that within the Unix philosophy, we have 3 rules that we should apply when we are developing a new model, Puppet model. One is the rule of clarity. Clarity is better than cleverness. Maintenance of code is really expensive. And when you have to go back and rewrite some piece of code, it will take you more time. So as human beings, we should try to make everything simpler for everyone. And the smaller the Puppet model is, the better. I will show an example later about it. The rule of simplicity, again, the smaller the Puppet model and the simpler all the connections and all the pieces are between the model, it will be the better for everybody. And the rule of diversity, especially in Puppet, like there is no one true way of doing a Puppet model. There is no one true way of doing something with Puppet. That's one of the advantages. And also, just because you can, doesn't mean that you should. So I wrote this tweet a couple of months ago, and I think it's relevant because most of the people that are claiming of moving away from one config management to the other is because they are using almost 10 or 20% of its capabilities. And especially in Puppet, most of the people are actually only using the DSL or maybe only using a custom fact. And basically, Puppet is way more than that. You can write providers, you can write types, you can write functions. And all of these tools will come together and will help you on how you develop your code. It will also reduce the amount of lines of code that you are going to be writing in the DSL. 1 year ago, when I moved to Sydney, I got to this company, and they had this monolithic model. It was called Puppet, and insert the company name. This model was responsible of generating a large piece of code. They built inside this model the logic to create roles, the logic to create profiles, the logic to even create backend and frontend applications. This was also configuring operating system configurations, LVM, networking, pindom scripts, server roles, you name it. Even the monitoring. The monitoring was, on this model, was managing almost 98 types of monitoring, and it was really crazy. Whenever somebody had to create a line of code in this model, you were affecting almost all the pieces of the infrastructure that were going around. And this was actually a model that was not even versioned. So yeah, it was quite hard. There was another case in the same model. There were around 48 shell scripts that were generated. And obviously, when somebody creates a file and creates a shell script within the file, most likely will be an exec in that model that is going to execute that shell script and execute something else. And I like this tweet from Sam Kotler, where he says that when you see a nice sh.rb, it's a war crime about to happen. And I also share it a lot of times at the office every day. So there is another case of not bad practices, but something that actually masks the problems on your code, which is the famous first boot script. everybody has a first boot script on their machines that actually installs Puppet and triggers some configuration, but some other people actually has another loop in the script that basically runs Puppet every single time until there is a successful run. It doesn't, because their code is not idempotent or deterministic, every time that Puppet runs, there is a different result. This is basically a bad practice because what you are doing here is masking what is going on in your code. You should be able to run Puppet once, and your machine should be in the desired state every single time. Another case that I've done actually in the past was using Puppet as a silver bullet. One of the things I decided to 4 years ago when Twitter open sourced Unproxy is to create a module called Unproxy. And at that moment, were not any Debian or RPM packages, so I decided to, I can just put the tar.gc on the repository, and then just compile it using Puppet. So I decided to download the file, execute a tar, then configure the package, and compile it. And not happy with that, I decided to do the same thing with Redis, because we had a custom Redis configuration. And yeah, that's actually not a good practice. We have several number of tools that will help us to package our code. We can use SPM Cookery, and they make it really easy. And then you just can tell Puppet, hey, ensure that this package is installed on this platform. There also are several repository tools that you can download, and they are open. And you can just upload your packages there and make everything easier for everybody. Another case that I had in this year is not many companies are doing graphs of what is going on their infrastructure. None of them are using dashboards to see how Puppet is behaving across all the infrastructure. So Puppet has several tools on the open source world that will help you with that. There is a famous quote from John Olspa that engineers like graphs for a good reason. Like they tell stories. And if you can have a story told about how your Puppet infrastructure is working, you will be able to commit code in a more self-confident way. And that will be really good for your new hires and for everybody in general. Some tools like Puppet Board from Vox Populi, Foreman, Puppet Dashboard, Console, all of those are really used to have, and they are really easy to set up. Basically, they will give you a high overview of what is going on in your infrastructure. We were talking about how people are underusing Puppet and all of the tools. One of the things is about functions and providers and types. In the past, many people had to do stuff like, if not defined this package, please install it. Now with stdleave, we have stuff like ensure packages, and you don't have to do all these messy configurations. And you can even take advantage of Hiera, in order to install a several hash of packages in your infrastructure. Another cool function that I found a couple of years ago was fqdn run that I think now is called fqdn string. Basically, what it ensures is that according to certain string seed, you can have different numbers on your different random numbers across all your infrastructure, and it's really handy when you have to set up crons in your machines, and you don't have to take into consideration that, oh, this cron is executing at 1 a.m., and I want this other cron that is also expensive to execute at any other time. This type of functions will do it for you. Another common situation within Puppet is that you end up with a lot of applications that have exactly the same code, but they just change, they just tweak a bit the environment that you are running the application from. And you end up with this kind of tree that is really not the best approach, because now you have stuff like ensure resources, and you can create a definition, and through a Hiera hash, you can tell your code to execute something any number of times that you need it to. So basically, you can have a development YAML in your Hiera code and a production YAML in your Hiera code, and you don't have to create this bunch of manifests around your model. This is particularly handy when you want to delegate the configuration to any other team, and you don't want them to write the Puppet code because whatever reason. But yeah, they can just go there and add another hash in the Hyera code, and they will have their application provision. Nobody wants to be the guy that actually have a manifest with 100 user resources or 100 package resources. What you want to have is a hash in Hyera that does it all for you. If somebody wants a new user in the infrastructure, in the server, they just create a pull request into Hyera, and they will have it for sure. You don't have to touch any Puppet code to make it work. Another good practice would be to use environments. Environments are one of the best things that happened to Puppet after 3.0, I think. In the beginning, you had to set it up a little bit hackish on the Puppet code, but now Puppet has dynamic directory environments, which is basically that whenever you create a new directory with your branch on your server, on your Puppet master, Puppet will detect that this is a new environment, and it will load the configuration from there. It is really powerful, especially when you use it with RTNK, because with RTNK, you don't have to go to the Puppet master and do anything to make it happen. You just execute RTNK regularly, and it will connect to your repository, and it will create a new environment for you for your new branch. And you can even create a hook to Slack or to HipChat or to whatever chat that you're using, and it will tell you when the new environment is available on your machine. The configuration is plain easy. Just 4 lines, and you will have your RTNK configured. So another thing that is really important in Puppet is about using files, templates, and outlets. In most of the cases, people overuse them, and people don't see what is the value that is behind each one of them. So they start setting up files with passwords and usernames instead of actually delegating that to a template and having it on Hyera, or even Augias and having it on Hyera encrypted. So it's really important to note that whenever you're using a file, the file actually gets transferred to each one of the clients on every single run. So if you are somebody that actually cares about your network because you have a bunch, thousands of servers in the data center, you could actually, depending on the size of the files that you're transferring, you will be melting your switches. So that's not a good approach. The idea is to be careful about what you are actually shipping on a file. If you're using a template, it takes time from the catalog compilation to be rendered. They are slow, but they are really powerful. So yeah, you have to get to a point where you have the good combination between the two of them. And also, Augias is really a Swiss tool for modifying configurations. Basically, it treats all your config files as a tree of values. There is another feature of Puppet that I think is a little bit underestimated, and it can be really nasty at some point, which is the file recursion. Many people are using file recursion to transfer a bunch of files from their Puppet server, like virtual host configurations. And at some point, you can get into this type of configurations where you have another file defined on the same directory, and this will be randomly set up on the server, and you could end up with Nginx restarting every time Puppet runs. So it's really good to be careful about how people are using this, because it can be really nasty at times. About protecting your secrets. So in the past 2 years, I arrived to different companies, and yes, none of the companies have actually taken care of their secrets. So they have passwords in plain text, going around in files, going around in templates, going around in manifests, and they only have Hyera using some key values to configure the infrastructure. This is something that is quite important, because your InfoSec guys will be really happy about it when you are encrypting your passwords, and Puppet offers some tools to do it. Within Hyera, you have Hyera GPG, Hyera eYAML, and Hyera eYAML GPG. And lately, I think that actually there is a talk about it, Hyera Vault. These tools basically enables you to encrypt your secrets within Hyera and then move it out to your templates. From the perspective of operations, it's handy because you don't have to rely on files, and basically you can move all these key values to the Hyera, and your developers can go there, change the password that is actually for their application, for connecting to MySQL, for connecting to Redis, for connecting anywhere, and you don't have to care about it. Basically, that's part of what we call delegating Delta configurations. And it's an approach that we're taking really into consideration within eBay, and we are trying to move everything there. So it will be really good. So the idea is when you're delegating these configurations to Hyera or to any other backend, you can delegate. Your models won't have any knowledge about how the infrastructure is communicating between each other in terms of which credentials are they using. Another thing is you can leverage this to any other team, and you could be safe that they are not touching any Puppet code. So just change this key value, and nothing wrong will be happening on the infrastructure. All the secrets should be encrypted, obviously. Lately, I'm preferring to use eYAML, basically because if you open here at GPG, you cannot open the file, and you cannot do search over the key values there, unless you have the private key. And for extra security, just separate both modules and Hyera from different repos, and just give write access to the people that you want to use it. Another way of delegating safely all these configurations is to use namespacing properly. Some of the frustrations that I've seen in the past few years is that you arrive to a code base and you want to see, oh, what is this Nginx, this vhost key actually doing on the infrastructure? Nobody knows because and the easy answer is do a grep and find where this Hyera vhost is being used. Puppet is smart, and he knows when you namespace your keys properly where to look for it. He knows if you have a different hierarchy, which environment belongs to each one of the machines, and he knows, depending on which module are you using, where this key should be stored or should be applied. This is something that you should be taking really into consideration because it takes a lot of time from any one of your colleagues to find out. So why all this is important? So basically, I don't think people also only quit their jobs. They actually quit their coworkers, and they also quit their code bases. So if you want to keep all these new people that is arriving to your company, and you want to keep all these old timers that are arriving to your company, you should actually take a little bit into consideration how your culture with your team is going on. And I think that it's underestimated the impact of how can you get burned out about what is going on your infrastructure. Like, if you have to go to the same code base and refactor the same things over and over again until this gets to a state that is actually manageable, your coworkers are going to get really frustrated. Oh, I think I actually have a lot of time. And to wrap up a bit, so the idea is not to use Puppet to build your packages. Use any other tool that is designed for that. Designed for simplicity. Do not make anything uber complex because it's going to be hard to maintain. Do not code remotely on your Puppet masters, which is another practice that I've seen a lot of times. And yeah, for 2 people on a team, it scales, but it doesn't scale when you are 10 or 20 people on a team. And normally, as the traffic grows, the infrastructure grows, and the team will grow as well. Use R10K and any other tool to distribute your Puppet code. Do not go to each one of the Puppet masters and do a git pull or git checkout of a branch because it's not worth it. Basically, it will save you a lot of time every single day. Encrypt all your secrets and it will make your InfoSec guys happy. Move all your Delta configurations to Hyera or any other backend. That will save also a lot of times because nobody will be creating a ticket for you for changing the vhost of this application because they can do it by themselves. They will just open a pull request, you review it, and you merge it, and it will be there in production. Use the proper namespaces in Hera. That's really useful as well. And be wise about using files and templates within your infrastructure. Does anybody has any question?
We have a pretty common problem that deals with packaging, and that's deploying out like big directories. Sometimes they're in zip files. And you talked a little bit about not getting into the habit of deploying lots of files with file server. What would you recommend for that, or what would be your solution?
So as I mentioned in one of the slides, I think, there are several tools, FPM, FPM Cookery, and FPM Dockery, and they are really helpful. They are, this thing is here. Here. So basically with FPM, that was created by Jordan Cicel, you can just build up your packages with a simple definition. And FPM Cookery, basically, it's a wrapper on top of FPM that using Ruby has a lot of helpers for you to say like, hey, I just want to build this Go file, this is the SHA, this is the maintainer, and it will do it for you. We are using currently FPM Cookery because it's really easy for us to create recipes there, and we are attaching that to our CI. So whenever we want to create a new version of the package, we just go to the GitHub repo, bump the version, bump the SHA, and that's it. And then we just delegate Puppet to do the config management, not the building of packages.
One question about eYAML. I'm familiar with YAML, not TYAML. I've seen one demo, and I can see that people are more or less modifying the keys and values directly on the server. How do you put that into source control?
So on our, with eYAML, eYAML uses the same YAML file that you are using for your normal key value, and you have the namespacing and the encrypted key, right? Yes. That's the difference between Hera GPG and Hera YAML. Hera YAML, you can even tell on the Hera YAML to use the .yaml extension, and then you don't have to do any change on your Puppet code. You just have to encrypt the keys.
What about the key management?
So that's a problem that we are actually having, how to control when keys change, and that which was the previous value and what is the current value. And the way that I think we are going to go is storing them also in Vault. So that way we could have it also there. And we have the auditing from Vault.
Hi, could you touch upon the code review? Are you using manual or automated code review to make sure any malicious code doesn't end in production environments?
So I cannot hear you very well. I'm sorry.
Sorry?
I cannot hear you very well.
OK. How about now?
Yeah.
OK. Could you touch upon the code review process? Like, how are you making sure that any malicious code doesn't get into production? So what kind of gates you have?
So about the code review process, we're using Gerrit at the moment. And Gerrit is, I think everybody that is going into operations should start using Gerrit, at least for a year, because it helps you understand how Git actually works. And it's restrictive enough to ensure that you have a proper workflow. With GitHub, for example, you just create a pull request, and everybody can merge it, and nobody is even squashing the commits, or you can get into this huge story with a lot of changes. And with Gerrit, actually, that's enforced to be tied to one commit. I think that in the operations mindset, we don't have a mindset for code review, and we have to improve that over the years. And that's something that is a work for everybody to improve. Anybody else? Awesome. So I just leave this quote here that I think is really good for operations. Like, we will never be perfect at doing what we are doing because the perfection is always moving. Thank you very much.